What's up, everybody? Welcome to BioWest 3 Raw TV. So, today I wish I really didn't have to be making this video, and this is a tribute to FLEXATRON Shawn Rhoden. And there have been many people that have passed away in our industry the past 6 months, but today's video, this one is a tribute to Shawn. It's specifically about Shawn. It's for Shawn. Today it's all about Shawn. Now, it took me a couple days. He passed on Saturday. I woke up and found out that he had passed away of a heart attack. And I want to take a couple days or just a little bit of time to compose my thoughts, and we're going to get into why right now. Because I get very frustrated with these channels and these pages, I don't know what you would call them, I guess these social media pages, whatever, that are so quick to jump. I mean, someone passes away and 2 minutes later they're online trying to get views, trying to get clicks, trying to be the first one to break the story. You know, like I feel like they consider themselves journalists or news channels or news, you know, news pages, or I don't know what the fuck it is, but pretty much everybody wants clickbait. Everybody wants to get out there and try to be the first one to break the story, so people share that and they gain more popularity and they make more money, and it's all about the views. And they don't really give a fuck about who or what they're talking about. They don't give a rat's fucking ass. They're into the guys, but you know, before facts even come out, these channels and pages will go, well, no facts yet, but so-and-so passed away. And it's like, then what the fuck are you reporting? You know what I mean? Let the person who passed away report it before you do, when you don't have any information. Anyway, it just frustrates the fuck out of me. But regardless, here's where we are, right? Shawn Rhoden, 2018 Mr. Olympia, and a friend of mine. And we're going to get into what kind of friend he was. Passed away Saturday morning. And Shawn was a local guy. Many of you may not know that. You know, I know he was living in Vegas right now, and he lived in Cali for a long time. He trained at Gold Venice. He used to drive quite a distance, actually, train at Gold Venice, to be totally honest with you. But before he moved out there, he was from Maryland. He lived here. He was from here. And when I first moved from Rhode Island down to Maryland, I was working at a Gold's Gym in Midtown, D.C. There wasn't a lot of competitors there. It was more of a lifestyle fitness gym. It was great. It was a great place to work. I had a great time. But as far as competing, there wasn't many people there that I, you know, could kind of talk to on that level and stuff. And I had the opportunity to move to the Rockville location on Nebel Street. Was another Gold's Gym. Became the fitness manager there. And while I was the fitness manager, I would try to do my training there, right? But I met people like Dave Gross, who was a top-level nationals competitor, Richard Siegelman, who was a top national level competitor, Dina Al-Sabah, who was, I believe she was figure pro. Bikini wasn't even a thing back then. I used to do cardio in the morning with her. Like, I met all these people. I was starting to meet this community of amazing bodybuilders and competitors that are in the DMV, Maryland, Virginia, and DC. We'll throw in Delaware in there too, and we'll throw in, you know, Pennsylvania, like all that Mid-Atlantic zone up here. An amazing collection of people and a great community. And during, you know, the time I was working at Gold's, I couldn't actually get my workouts in because during the day, you know, you'd have people coming in trying to buy memberships and buy training, and then the sales guys would run over to me in the middle of my workout and try to pull me away. And I had competitions coming up, and I'm like, I can't do this. I need to be somewhere where I can't, you know, nobody will bother me and they'll leave me alone. And I walked into Fitness First in on Rockville Pike. It's either Winter Garden or Wintergreen. I can't remember which one it is. Wintergreen, Winter Garden. Anyways, it's now a Gold's Gym. They were bought out by Gold's Gym. But when I walked in there, I met even more competitors, and you know, one of them was Steve McLeod, junior nationals champion, giant neck. I remember Steve being 275. There was a guy hanging with the guys there that wasn't really in shape, and he was really quiet, and that guy was Shawn Rhoden. So when I met Shawn, he was just on his journey back to going to the gym again after the passing of his father, which really did a number on him emotionally. And he wound up, well, you know, he used to compete like as a light heavyweight, Team Universe, and those different shows, and he used to do really well. But after the passing of his father, he kind of walked away from it for a while and took on the role of the, you know, the running that family business that he had. And he was back in the gym now. He's back training, and his nickname was Big Fat Shawn. It was a nickname that, looking back, you know, it's like almost like an opposite nickname because he used to get so shredded on stage. But he was so big, so heavy, so out of shape, and he didn't really have the muscle anymore. And, you know, he was just getting back. And what's Shawn? Because Big Fat Shawn. Okay, Big Fat Shawn. And he was always quiet, reserved, kind of laid back, real chill kind of guy. And, you know, I'd see him in the gym. You know, we'd talk and hang out in the gym, whatever. And, you know, it was interesting to see where he came from and where he wound up. Like, that's something that we all here watched. He was a local guy. We watched him, you know, go through all that. And I remember this one show I went to, I was running late for, and everybody else had already gone in. And they're in the show and stuff. And I got there, was Laurel High School. And I walk in, and Shawn, of course, being Shawn, who's on Shawn's time, or Island time he called it, you know, he was late too. So it was just the two of us when we got there. We're in the foyer. So, all right. So we went in, just him and I. We sat by ourselves. We watched a show. We shot the shit. And again, just a reserved guy. You know, chill dude. Like not hard to get along with. To be totally honest with you. You know, he never talked bad about people. You know, people on stage that looked terrible. He didn't even talk shit about them. He said he like put a positive spin on it. Like, needs a little more shoulders. I'm like, he's got no legs. No, like, you know, people are talking about he's fat. He's this. Needs a little more shoulders, but he's got decent shape. Like. He had positive things to say about people, even though other people around him weren't saying positive things. And so 2008, 2009, around there, he started getting really heavily back into bodybuilding. And at this time, I owned a website, a company, with Kevin Lavroni and another mutual friend, Rick Rofold, who was actually introduced me to Kevin originally, called M3Muscle.com. M3, there were three of us from Maryland, the three M's, M3, that's what it was. It was also takeoff of the Maryland Muscle Machine, which was Kevin's video that he had put out previously. And we had like a forum, which was interesting at the time. Like there were message boards, but we had a forum, but we also had like a video section. We had a blog section. There was all these cool things on this website. And we were filming all this footage. Like we were in the gym training, right, with Kevin. We were doing training footage. We would go to shows and film the shows, you know, and then put the shows up. This is before, you know, Instagram was really big or Facebook was really big. I think MySpace was actually popular back then. So it was more like we were trying to bring traffic to the channel by, you know, putting up different things that you see in the magazines that are no longer really around. And then the video thing was something that really we moved forward with because there wasn't a lot of people doing that. I'd go to these shows. Like I went to Junior Nationals. I interviewed Dave Palumbo, and I met Dusty Hanshaw for the first time in 2009 and interviewed him and Don Long and all these different people. And then we go back and we put them up. And one day Rick comes in. He says, "Hey, we're going to do an interview with Shawn Rhoden. Shawn's competing again." Now, I hadn't seen him in a little while. I was like, really? So Shawn shows up at Rick's house, which is where we set everything up. The cameras, it was like our headquarters. And he's wearing like a football jersey and spandex pants. And his legs were fucking enormous. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I was so taken back by how fast he had transformed his physique that I was like, I don't know what to say. He looked like a fucking pro. He really did. Those legs were pro quality legs. And he had a football jersey that he didn't really take the football jersey up, but he showed us his legs and he flexed them on camera. And we did the interview with him. And this is a very eerie, very shocking and awesome story right now that I'm about to tell. And again, there's a lot of emotion with this right now. Like I'm trying to just kind of do this story justice the way that I'm explaining it. So Shawn tells us during this interview that he is going to go compete for the first time in I don't know how many years it was, that he was going to win the Delaware, like the overall Delaware, which, okay, feasible. He looks great. Legs are crazy, looking cool. But after the Delaware, he's going to win the overall North American Championships. Now we were like, this guy hasn't even competed in like, I don't know, 12, 13, 15 years, whatever it was. And we're like, and he's talking about winning the North Americans. Like, I mean, Delaware, yeah, we could see that happening, but North Americans, it's a whole nother cake that you're cutting into, right? And then he says, and then I'm going to win a bunch of pro shows, and then I'm going to become Mr. Olympia. I'm going to win the Olympia. Now, we laughed at him. We actually laughed at him because we thought he was joking because he's just getting back to training and stuff and competing. And he said, you watch. He starts laughing. He goes, okay, you watch. He goes, you'll see. And he kind of looks around at the floor, and he's got his eyebrows raised. He said, you'll see, watch. And kind of with his head like that. And he leaves, and Kevin was like, you know, he's like, I can't believe this guy, you know, I'm sitting here, and I've come in second at the Olympia multiple times. He's like, and I busted my ass nonstop. It wasn't like I took big breaks unless I was injured. He goes, and you know, I never won the Olympia. And here's this guy saying he hasn't even competed in I don't know how, God knows how long. I don't even know if he's ever won an overall. And he's telling me he's going to be Mr. Olympia. But a lot of people do that. A lot of people say, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia one day. He goes, and that's their mindset. He goes, and they just, you know, they fizzle out. They don't even compete sometimes. So we had this discussion about how many people say they're going to be Mr. Olympia and don't. And then The time came. Now, here's the interesting part. Shawn was doing the Delaware, and he was supposed to do the Maryland the week after, right? It was literally the week right after, or the Shawn Ray. Where's the Shawn Ray? Anyways, whatever show it was, he was supposed to do both back to back. Now, I didn't know that until maybe about a week out, I find out that he's supposed to be in my class. And I'm looking at him going, like, nobody's working with those legs, man. Like, it doesn't matter who shows up. Like, those legs are so far above everybody around here. Like, there's no fucking, it's like a fight for second. There's no way. And I was bummed out. I was like, shit. I'm like, that guy's going in there. At least I'll just see how I can stack up. Like, I was going to go stack up on stage against Shawn fucking Rhoden, right? Listen to what I'm telling you. This was my life back in 2012 or 2012, I think it was. So, he does the Delaware, and he wins the overall. Kind of had a feeling, right? Looked great. So the next week, the show comes up, and he shows up at the Maryland, and I'm there getting ready to, get tan and stuff. And he says, yeah, I'm not doing the show. And I'm like, why not? He said, well, I'm just, I already qualified for North Americans. I won the overall. He's like, it would just to be like, to get another trophy or something like that. He's like, but I really wanted to make a run at the North Americans. Right? And I was like, thank God. I said, I don't want to stand next to those legs anyways. I really did. Like, and he laughed, and, he said, well, I'm trying to avoid you. He's like, you smell. It was just a back and forth, like, kind of laughing banter thing. But I was happy I didn't have to compete against him. And, at that point, we didn't know. We still didn't know how much better he was going to get. And he goes to North Americans. And at North Americans, I was working at a club that night called Diamond in Falls Church. We had the computer pulled up in the bar. And sure enough, he wins the North Americans. And now, he didn't just win. He won, like, we were like, wow. Like, it was like, he walked on stage and we were like, holy shit. Now, mind you, he's been telling us he's going to do this, right? He believed in himself that much. He was telling us he was going to do this. So now we're like, well, now he's a pro. Well, let's see what's up. Well, I'll be damned if he didn't win a string of pro shows after that. Right? And the whole time in the back of my head, I'm like, this dude told us this like a few years ago. Like, he told us this was going to happen. He told us his plan, and he's fucking executing it. He's doing it. I'm like, this is crazy, right? Of course, he moves out to the West Coast. We don't see him that much, but every time I go out to the West Coast for the LA Fit Expo, for the Olympia, whatever's going on that I'm out there for, I always run into him, see him at Gold's Venice, hang out with him. He was training with Stanimal at the time. Sometimes I'd see him in Vegas with Sip, Sip Wilfried, another good friend of ours who moved from Maryland out there, who's an amazing natural bodybuilder. And then the time comes, we start seeing him at the Olympia, and he's placing third. We're like, Shawn's third in the world right now. That's unbelievable. Second. He's second in the world. He's knocking on the door to become Mr. Olympia. And then he does what we thought the impossible was, which is beating a dominant Phil Heath, who's dominating for 7 years in a row. Now, Phil's a very close personal friend of mine, and so is Shawn. And them two battling out, I just said, I don't know. Phil's just so dominant. He just, I didn't see what Shawn was going to bring because he showed a little bit, but he kind of hit his physique a little bit that year, so we didn't really see the full kind of wow factor that Shawn brought to the stage that year. And I was beat up from the expo, and I told my wife, I said, let's just go grab a steak at the steakhouse here, get to bed early. And, while we were at dinner, she went to the bathroom, I checked, and lo and behold, Shawn won the Olympia. And I said, holy shit, he didn't just win the Olympia, he beat Phil, which I felt awful for Phil, but I felt great for Shawn. I was sad for Phil, I was happy for Shawn. And if the roles were reversed, I'd be sad for Shawn and happy for Phil. Like, that's how it is. And I kept thinking, I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this is what he said. This is what he told us he was going to do. And the next morning, my wife and I got up. We were heading to breakfast in the Uber, and my phone rings. I look at it, and it says, Kevin Levrone. And I know, the day after Olympia, Shawn wins. I know exactly what Kevin's going to say. I go, hello, I got on speakerphone. He goes, can you believe that fucking guy did it? And I started laughing. He goes, do you remember? And I cut him off. I said, I remember, bro. I know. I said, I knew as soon as you called what you were going to say. And we talked for about 10, 15 minutes about that's unbelievable. We were both super happy for him, but we were more like, he was like Babe Ruth calling his shot. Like, I'm going to fucking knock it out of the park over there. And everybody laughing at him. And he did it. Now he's the best in the world. Like, he had that much belief in himself, right? He knew he could work hard enough based on his gifts that he has genetic-wise, the hard work he was going to put in, and the belief in himself that he could do that. Even when none of us thought he could. You know, including Kevin. None of us thought he could ever do that. And that is just a detriment as to who Shawn was. He never gave up. You know, he was in some dark places when his father passed. He had some issues, you know, like trying to get back in the swing of things. But once he did, it was pedal to the metal, and he won the Olympia, right? Unbelievable story, right? That's just like one of the stories that I have about Shawn. You know, and I see him, like, again, all the time at the expos and stuff. When he comes to town, we would run into him. And this past March, Shawn came to town. And we had a seminar, a posing seminar, not an expo, a posing seminar for the NPC on how to pose. Benefits Gym in Rockville. And Shawn came to the event. He came, and then he sat on a panel to do a Q&A with, it was sitting there, was Gary Udit, it was me, it was Shawn, it was Laura Lee Chapman, and I believe Teresa Anthony, and I think Esther Gotowski might have been there too. That was the panel. And we're sitting there talking about the power of self-belief, right? We're sitting there talking about, you know, like, this is something that takes a lot of your time, a lot of your effort. You have to believe in yourself, and you have a support system. Like, we're trying to cover all the things for these new competitors that are just getting involved in the sport, so they have a leg up. And they know what they're getting themselves into, and they could do better right off the bat, right from the jump. And as Gary's explaining stuff, I'm getting ready to tell the story about what I just told you guys. I'm going to tell the story about how we sat him down for the interview, and he told us what he was going to do, and he backed it up, and it took him years, but he did it. And right when Gary's done talking, Shawn goes, I have a story I want to tell you guys. And I'm like, all right, well, he can do his story, and I'll come back to mine. It's about him, so whatever. And he says, Jerry might remember this. And he looks at me like in the side. He's got the microphone in his hand. He says, Jerry might remember this. He said, but years ago, I did an interview with him and Rick and Kevin. And he launches into the entire story. Now, all I'm thinking is, this dude just stole my thunder, man. He's got my story. I don't have a story now. Like, that was my story about self-belief. But it is his story, right? So he tells the whole story, and people are like, wow. And it was cool because I was there to back it up and say, yeah, this is true. This is how it went. And then actually interject little pieces back and forth of the story that maybe he forgot or I forgot. And it was like us going back and forth telling the story, laughing about it and stuff. And in the end, it was not just a great story, but it was reliving that moment again, right? Reliving that moment from when he says, I'm going to compete, I'm going to become Mr. Olympia. And then here he is sitting next to me as a Mr. Olympia, right? And I tell you, it just, you know, again, I'm looking back through things in my head. He came to dinner with us. Of course, he was the last one in. All of us were there. Shawn on Shawn time came in. He's always the last one there. He's always late. And I remember when he walked in, he was close to 280, 290. He was really big for him. And when he walked in, people would just stopped and looked. They were like, I mean, we had some big guys with us in this crew, but Shawn, like, he just looked, you know, because of that roundness and the fullness, and he was just so big, just in a t-shirt, that people in the restaurant, they didn't know what the fuck was going on when he walked in. Like, he just stood out among everyone else, and he just kind of sat there, you know, he was quiet, did his thing. And we had dinner with there for a few hours, and it was time to leave, and I went over to say bye to him, and when he hugged me, it wasn't the normal, like, you know, it's good to see me or whatever. Like, he hugged me, and he said something to the effect of, he's like, thank you so much for coming out, man. He's like, you know, I really appreciate it. I miss you guys. And, like, he hugged me tight, like he held me. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, you know, and that was in March of this year, I said, you know, that's a little more emotional. That's much more emotional than the Shawn that I know. He's not usually that emotional. What I didn't know, and I found out later on, that he had actually had some health complications that he didn't really make public, that he didn't want to talk about for whatever reason, last year. So there was a different version of Shawn this year that I could see and feel, that I knew something was different. I didn't really know what it was, because, again, I wasn't privy to what was happening. And then a few weeks ago at the Olympia, I like to go into the expo the day before or 2 days before, whenever they're setting up, to whatever booth that I'm working at, so I can find the booth. I know what's going on. I know how to get there, where it is in the grand scheme, and then I go everywhere else to see where all the other booths are and stuff, so that when I'm, you know, deciding I want to take a walk or whatever, I know where people are. I can go see them. And then I usually stop at those booths because the expo's not open. I can talk to everybody, right? The music's not playing. There's not a whole bunch of people around. I can talk to different people that own the companies and friends and people that, you know, I've worked with before, whatever the case may be. And Shawn's booth was not, it was like 3 booths away from ours. So when I got over there, he was standing there, and I thought he was filming something. He was actually on a phone call, like a FaceTime. he's like, hang on. He's like, a friend of mine is here. Let me call you back. So he hung up and we talked about it. And the last conversation I had with Shawn Rhoden was a very eerie conversation about George Peterson. Talking about George passing away the day before. Talking about all the things that come with that. Right? All the people that have passed away this year. You know, George especially, we talked about, you know, what was happening right then and there. We talked about the state of affairs as far as, you know, the amount of stuff people are using. And, I mean, we talked about just about everything, but it was all about that shocking George Peterson, you know, passing away. And again, Shawn was big. He was right around 300 pounds. I mean, the biggest version I'd ever seen him. I kind of figured he was getting ready to make a comeback. I didn't know. I thought maybe, you know, time was getting to the point where he's putting the mask back on. He's going to start cutting back down again. You know, like, I don't know. I thought 2022 might be the next big run that we saw, the next incarnation of Shawn Rhoden, FLEXATRON. And we just parted ways. You know, like, he was busy. It was his own personal company now that he's got. We parted ways. And I just figured I'd see him later on in the weekend or at the next show or when he came to visit or whatever the case may be. And, like, Shawn would pop on my Instagram lives all the time. He would just pop on and be like, hey, what's up? And he'd be like, how's the weather out there? Like, what is the most random shit? He always asked about people back home. Like, he always asked what this person was doing. How's that person? Have I seen this person? How's everything going? How's the weather? It was almost like he was homesick and he wanted to come home. But he was always talking about that stuff. And I would pop on his Instagram lives when he was there, and he'd say the same thing. He'd be like, Jerry, he's like, what's going on out there, man? He's like, is everybody cool out there? Everybody healthy? Everybody doing good? How's the weather? And that was just kind of our thing. We would DM here and there, like, just randomly about stuff, about, you know, he would see something like I was judging a show or whatever, and he'd be like, hey, is that so-and-so sitting next to you? How's he doing? I haven't seen him. Like, you know, not bodybuilding stuff, like bringing up stuff that has just to do with real life, you know? And I just figured I'd see him at the next show or the next seminar or whatever. And, of course, Saturday, you know, they posted all over the internet that he had passed away without any real information, which makes it even worse because you're left to speculate and fill in the gaps and make up the shit in your head that you don't really know what's going on. And time will tell. You know, it was a heart attack, and it was in his sleep, and it's been confirmed now. And I just want to say that Shawn Rhoden, you know, kind of did his own thing. He marched to the beat of his own drummer. He got to whatever places he was going to in his own fucking time. He did things his way. He had a self-belief that was so strong that he went from zero to hero very quickly. And I think that the testament, it honestly is the fact that here's a guy who became the best in the world at something that we all wanted to do. Everybody here was super proud of him. He was one of us. He was one of the local guys, and he made it to the top of the fucking mountain, the Mr. Olympia, and he beat a dominant fucking bodybuilder in Phil Heath. And we were so proud of him. And it's just tragic that it ends this way, and it makes me keep thinking over and over again. I'm 45. Shawn was 46. I'm going to be 46 in less than a month. It makes me start thinking more and more about that age, about heart health, about, you know, in general, carrying extra weight, all these types of things, gear use. It makes me think about all that stuff, regardless of, you know, what was the culminating factor of his passing. George Peterson made me think about it. Phil Hernon made me think about it. John Meadows made me think about it. You know, Sophia Graham made me think about it. You know, everybody, Andy Ham made me think about it. All the people that passed away this year made me think about it. But Shawn hits home pretty close because he was my age and he was one of us. And it's a hard pill to swallow. So, Shawn, thank you for all the stuff you did while you were here. Congratulations on your success. We will miss you. FLEXATRON will live on forever. Rest in peace, my friend. I'm Biohistory, and I approve this message. And we're out.